Hey, race fans, Hall of Famer Darrell Waltrip here. You know, it's time to drop the green flag on another edition of Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace-O-Matic. So, hey, pull those belts tight one more time. Here's my buddy Hermie Sadler and Senator Bill Stanley. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's see what they have to say, boys and girls.
Hi, everybody. I'm Virginia State Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm leaning right.
And I'm former NASCAR driver and Fox Sports analyst Hermie Sadler, and I am turning left. This is another edition of Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace-O-Matic.
Hey, Hermie.
Senator.
How you doing, bud?
Doing good, buddy. How are you?
Do you know that this is our 20th podcast episode?
Really?
20. Can
Already?
you believe it? It just has flown by, hasn't it?
20.
I mean, just like talking to you and I as we normally do on the telephone, this is just every day now. I look forward to it.
We've had some interesting guests, and today will be no different.
You come always to the fore with the guests. And then, just like you said before we came here a couple days back, Stanley, you get the guest. And usually I say, no, you get the guest. And then you went, no, you get the guest. So I got the guest, and I think you're going to enjoy who it is. It's a controversial character in the Virginia legislature, a guy who has done about everything that there is to do in life. He loves life. He's passionate. He's not afraid of controversy. He's not afraid of speaking his mind or standing up against those, even in his party, when he disagrees with them. He's loved by a lot of people and not loved by some people. That's Senator Joe Morrissey, a friend I've had for 25 years.
Yeah, look forward to hearing from Joe. I've talked to Joe on several occasions, mostly about our ongoing issue as it relates to skill games, mostly before we filed the lawsuit last June. But he's an interesting character. He's not afraid to let his views be heard. He's not afraid to fight. And he is a lightning rod in a lot of ways to the Senate over there in Virginia. So look forward to hearing from Joe, talking to Joe, and we'll throw some questions at him, as will our guest again this week. We need to set the stage for where we are. We're at Boyd Chrysler Dodge Jeep in South Hill, Virginia, and I'll go ahead and say it for the purpose of this podcast. The man in charge. Here.
Oh, wait, I thought I meant the real man in charge. This guy's in charge?
Oh, that's just Brian Boyd. Just because his name's on the bid doesn't mean he's in charge.
He can't hear us right now.
He cannot hear us right now.
Shep is in charge.
So for right now, we are bringing back, by popular demand,
yes,
the one, the only Shep Moss, who wears many hats, not only sales manager here at Boyd Chrysler Dodge Jeep
and Ram,
but also a member of town council here in South Hill. That he many of the issues that we're fighting statewide, he is working on bringing attention to locally, and so we want to continue that narrative. So we appreciate you joining us again this week.
Well, thanks for having me. And I think after last week's podcast, we've lit a little fire under somebody's butt, and I think we're going to get some things addressed here in our county.
Well, and that's great too, and that's what part of this podcast is all about: making people think, making people talk, and making people react. And I drove by on my way in here from Franklin County, right by a little shop with a sign out front that said "Memory Makers," and if I remember correctly, that's your business too.
Isn't it a cool spot?
It is a cool spot, except right across the street is the sign that says "Butts and Butts," and it wasn't a gentleman's club.
No, that's a law firm.
Oh, really? Now, see, I'd be advertising the heck out of that. You want some butts? Come here, you'll get some butts. That's what you got to trade on. Do they do something like that? Like, we kick butts at Butts and Butts?
That could be a good tagline.
Hey, listen, tell them to give me a call. I can help them out.
Yeah,
I think like this stuff all the time.
I would love for you to have a conversation with Jimmy Butts. I think y'all would have a lot in common.
I'd probably be giggling.
You think so?
No, I do not.
I'm probably going,
I don't think that'd be a real good conversation, to be honest.
Butts.
I can tell you right off the bat, look, I know Mr. Butts well, a nice guy. I've known him my whole life, but he is not a fan of skill games.
Oh, really?
And not a fan of a lot of things that I'm a fan of, and probably that you're a fan of.
Well, maybe I'll just stay across the street at Memory Makers.
You just stay at Memory Makers. That's right.
Looks like they have a lot of good
Spend your money
items.
at Memory Makers and only visit Butts and Butts upon demand.
Now, not only is it significant, as I've just learned, that we're sitting here in a car dealership. It's kind of the halfway point for us, and we get to bring Shep on, who works here. But also, we are next door to where your auto dealership was when you were the youngest. I think you told us you were the youngest franchise owner of a Chevrolet dealership in the United States, and actually right across the way is the original building where your first dealership was. Is that right?
Nope, partly right. So
I'll take partly right.
yeah,
I'm never that with my wife.
I
Laura.
purchased what was the old Fred Watkins Motor Company here in South Hill in late 1992.
Right downtown.
And the dealership was in downtown South Hill, a smaller, older fixture of the town that had been here for years and years and years. I bought that in the fall of 92, heading into 93, as I was beginning my first full-time season in NASCAR. I just signed a personal service contract with General Motors. I signed my racing contract with Don Beverly. And actually, General Motors helped me negotiate with and purchase the assets of Fred Watkins Motor Company from the Watkins family and that dealership. And at that time, yes, at 24 years old, 23, almost 24, was the youngest GM dealer in the country at that time.
Well, let's talk about that just
And
a little
Bill,
bit.
actually, I worked for Hermie during those times at that Chevrolet dealership.
Is that right?
But to get to where we are now, so I bought that in 92, heading into 93. In late 2005, fast forward to 2005, I bought, so Walmart had been in South Hill for some years. Walmart came into South Hill. They had a regular Walmart. They came in along that time period, 2005, 6, 7, and built a Walmart Supercenter adjacent to the original Walmart. Well, I ended up coming out here. I really felt like we needed to move the dealership from being stuck in the middle of town and get it out around closer to the bypass and get some interstate traffic and more visibility and those kind of things. So when Walmart came in and built the Supercenter, I bought the existing Walmart building that they moved out of and really just moved
500 yards.
500 yards and built a brand new building. So what's a better place to have maybe a dealership move to than in a Walmart building that's, guess what, right beside the new Walmart Supercenter in South Hill. So I bought the Walmart property, which includes all the land that we're sitting on now. This was the parking lot to the Walmart building that I bought.
It's about 4 acres.
And I had just started the process of getting plans drawn with General Motors and Honda to build a new building out here. And I had been talking to the Boyd family, Brandon, Brian, who you met earlier today,
Yes.
and the dad, Charles, about selling them my car dealership. They are a family, we are in multiple businesses, but the Boyd family has always been big into cars, in the car business. I had started to have some initial conversations with them. What they really wanted initially, what Charles really wanted, was just my Honda franchise. Honda franchises back in those days were really hard to come by.
Right.
The cars were valuable, the franchises were valuable, and Charles really just wanted the Honda franchise. And basically with me, it boiled down to, hey, I'm not really trying to sell, but if I'm going to sell interest in my car dealerships, not only am I going to sell the Honda franchise, I'm selling all the dealerships. And by the way, that means I'm also selling the Walmart building that I've purchased, looking forward to an opportunity to build out here. So make a long story short, I ended up selling everything. The downtown dealership, the building, the real estate, the Honda franchise, the GM franchise, Cadillac, Chevrolet, all that, and this Walmart property that we're sitting on right now that they have since then built these 2 new buildings on in front of the existing Walmart building that I had bought and never, I think I made 2 payments, which were hefty payments on this facility, but then sold it to them, as well as the dealership in Emporia and some other assets and things as well. So I have nothing but high praise for the Boyd family, Charles, Brandon, Brian, and their entire family for not only making the transition smooth, but as I mentioned to you guys off air before we came on, the fact that they have taken care of my employees that I had here and some that are still here today working, as well or better than I ever could have done myself. So for that, I'm thankful.
It sounds like maybe we could have a Turning Left moment sponsored by Boyd Dodge in our future, perhaps. I mean, they're very nice for letting us do it right here in the showroom with some spanking beautiful cars. I've actually had one of their general managers already take a look at maybe what my car is worth. And
The Caddy.
I might have the Caddy, and I might have an eye on one, but we'll see what happens. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the auto dealership, if you don't mind, because that's interesting to me. A lot of people know you, Hermie, in a lot of different ways, doing a lot of different things. Car dealership was not something I ever contemplated and thought of. Shep, what did you do for Hermie when you were at the car dealership?
Well, I was in sales. Actually, I really started at the oil company, and going way back in that time, the local Chrysler dealership reopened, and in a matter of 24 hours, I think Hermie lost the majority of his workforce because they went to the new dealership in town. And I'll never forget, his dad came out to the convenience store that I was, I guess, managing at the time, and he said, "Boy, get in the car, we're going to get some lunch." So, I'm thinking this is not going to be a good lunch.
Or the final like Yellowstone
lunch.
When they say take them to the train?
Yeah, I thought I was going to the train station. And, the conversation just basically went, Hermie has lost a lot of sales staff and work staff. You live in South Hill, go up there and work until we get some people hired, and you'll come back to the convenience store. Well, that never transpired. I came up and stayed. Probably for about 4 or 5 years at the car dealership. I went on to do some other things and have really come back full circle to the auto industry. But it really was a great learning experience. Hermie was obviously super to work for. And the
That's
Boyds have been nothing but
because he's sitting right next to you. Say that.
Well,
how was
no,
Hermie,
really,
how was Hermie as an owner? I mean,
well, at the
obviously,
time,
Hermie, at that age, it's not like you have a lot of experience in the car dealership business.
I did not.
You know
I
how
did
to
not.
drive them, but maybe not how to sell
I was
them.
in my mid-20s seeing a lot of these things for the first time. And by the way, was undertaking a full-time racing career as well. I was racing full-time back in those days. So I needed help daily to run the day-to-day operations of.
Because he wasn't
the
there
dealership.
that much. If the race shop hadn't been directly behind it in an adjoining dealership, adjoining warehouse, I don't know when we would have seen you.
Really? And
So it worked out good.
So how long did you said the time period, how long were you the owner of the dealership?
I bought in the fall of '92, and I sold everything car dealership related to the Boyd family in June of 2006.
Wow.
14 years.
So during that time, let's talk about the car business a little bit.
Yeah.
That is actually, you went through a recession, you went through some good times, some bad times, and back again to good times, and it looks like you sold right before bad times came in 2007. What's the car dealership like back then, comparatively speaking? What's it like now?
Well, I do not envy at all what new car dealerships are facing in today's world.
Yeah, because when we look out into the parking lot here, there's not the inventory. I see it at every car dealership that I'm seeing. It's supply chain issues, I'm sure. It's delivery issues, I'm sure. Costs of cars are going up. Cost of used cars have gone up astronomically.
Immensely.
And so that's got to be tough. But as you were saying, Shep, as general manager now, you're selling everything as soon as it comes in the lot, probably from people sight unseen out of the area who come in as soon as they know you have product.
One of the biggest reasons that because initially I was against selling, but one of the things that my dad taught, and I know Shep remember some of this stuff too, one of the things we had going for us in the old building in downtown South Hill was the fact that we were kind of grandfathered in, and we actually bought the Honda franchise from Hugh Hawthorne over in Victoria. And so the Honda people back in those days had no desire at all to have a standalone dealership in Victoria. So they gladly said, take it and merge it in with your General Motors operation in South Hill, and that'll be a win-win. We get out of Victoria. We're in a newer building, bigger area.
Competitors would let themselves be.
Well, what I'm saying, and so we were all merged in one building. So I had mechanics for General Motors and Honda and everything we were working on under one roof. Well, as we move forward to potentially moving to build out here, General Motors and Honda were both like, we've got to have our own standalone facilities. And I'm thinking to myself, to build a separate building, which is, back in those days was probably $2-3 million, to have a separate showroom and a separate mechanic and a separate service department, separate parts department for this franchise, and then Chevrolet wanted their own franchise. And so we were working through, but they wanted, and we've always believed in having everything together. If my Honda guy, was busy, great, but if he was a little slow, he could come down and walk down to the Chevrolet side and help a guy change oil or rotate tires or whatever. We always believed in, sharing the expenses across the board to not put too much financial burden on one piece of the pie.
Smart.
But the manufacturers, like General Motors, like Honda, they wanted to all have their own little space. And as you see today, I mean, Brandon and what they've done here in town has just been
This is one of the
remarkable.
newest Chrysler dealerships on the East Coast. And as little inventory as we have now, new inventory, it's only because this is one of the newest dealerships. That inventory has been allocated because it's a new dealership. It's part of the franchise agreement that they have to provide so much inventory. So we're very fortunate that we have what we do have.
Any crazy things happen while you're here that either you can't say, but you can give us maybe an indicator of, or say some of the wildest things that might have happened here with you and Hermie? Car owner, car dealer, car driver, Hermie Sadler, and his right-hand man, Shep Moss.
Well, way back in the working with Hermie days, of course, he was doing the NASCAR. He had gotten real involved with wrestling at the time. The UWF was exploding from literally Georgia to Connecticut. And it was a lot of cool things going on way back then in those days. As far as here, the craziest thing here has really just been the inventory and not having vehicles to sell. I know Hermie's even tried to order a vehicle. I can't even give him a date when it's going to be.
Oh, wait a minute.
When it's going to even be made.
Did you accept the crack truck?
The what?
The crack truck.
The crack truck.
The truck that was involved in the being stolen from a dealership?
As a trade.
As a trade. Did you take the crack
Well, we
truck?
didn't talk about that one.
Oh, really? Did you trade the
Are you
truck?
trying to backdoor trade?
I gave that truck to Ken Hodges, the guy that works in my go-kart shop, and I took his truck because it had the black GMC truck that I currently drive has got 200 and some odd thousand miles on it. So to answer your question, no.
So a theft upgraded you.
A theft upgraded me and
I would
upgraded
have
Ken,
thought,
actually.
listen, you get the crack truck, you put the crack truck in right here in this indoor showroom, you highlight the crack truck, you highlight the crack truck story, which has been told on an earlier podcast in a very funny way because I made Hermie do it. I mean, that's going to bring people in to me.
Maybe
That's
Hermie could autograph the dashboard for us. It could be one
a
of
crack
one.
pipe that
But
comes
look,
free with the truck.
I really give, on a serious note, I really give the Boyds a lot of credit. They were really willing to do something I was not willing to do at the time, and that is invest
Heavily.
probably on this little block of land here between here and the Honda store next door and the dealer, the work they did in and around. I mean, they've probably spent $15 million minimum on this little corner in South Hill, Virginia.
Yeah.
And I was not ready, willing, or able with everything I had going on in my life at that time, including a full-time job that had me gone 5 days a week. I never would have been able to or wanted to do that. So it was one of those things that worked for everybody, and that they were fair to me in the negotiation. I was fair with them in that I left them a good, profitable operating business and with opportunity to grow. And, when you look around at a small town like South Hill, even Emporia, some of the towns, if you lose the car dealerships,
That's right.
that's a sign that the rest of the towns
When you
ain't
drive
gonna be
by,
far behind it.
when you
your
drive by
dad-
and the sign's been ripped down and the showroom is empty, it is a psychological reminder of what was and what may never be again. You're exactly right. Car dealerships are so important to these small areas like
I
this.
remember your dad making that comment about Lawrenceville, that when that Ford Motor Company down there closed, that was the beginning of it, beginning of the end of the demise of Lawrenceville.
Now,
Chad is trying to give you some of these awkward looks and hand
Yeah.
signals again.
No, we're doing it back and
like
forth.
we're doing with Brian Newman.
I've got a little bit of a surprise.
So what?
I've got a little bit of a surprise.
Okay, what is it?
So I'm guessing that this car dealership, Shep, that you used to work at was called Sadler's Hot Rod Shop. Am I right?
I thought it was Sadler Chevrolet.
Sadler Auto Center of South Hill, Inc.
Okay. All right. So, and you said home of the bad sled, right? So you could ride out with the bad sled, right? Kids know that.
It was Sadler
cool
Auto
car.
Center of South Hill, Inc.
Was it Sadler or Sattler?
Sattler.
Now,
Hermie Sattler.
now,
Line
believe it or
one.
not, so there's a lot about you, Hermie, that I don't know, even with as many hours as you and I spend talking to each other about each other, that I had our executive producer, Brad Tuesday, go dig up some Sadler Auto Sales history. Is that what you're traded at Sadler Auto Sales?
Sadler Auto Center.
Sadler Auto Center. And we get here because I'm just going to roll forward a little bit. My son thinks the world of Hermie. I said, Hermie, do you have a poster or something we can put up in his rig room, his game room in the basement next door to my man cave? He gives me this poster. The poster is, he had Elliot sign it. He personally signed it for my son, Chandler. But in the middle of this poster is none other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I say, hey, Hermie, what is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson doing in the middle of this poster? He goes, he used to promote for me when I had a car dealership, acting like it was no big thing. That's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I bring that poster back to my office before I give it to my boy. My paralegal, my legal assistant, Rhonda Smith, says, that's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I said, yeah. And she was like, well, why hadn't he signed it? I said, well, he wasn't around to sign it when I got the poster. And she said, can you have him on the podcast? And I said, I don't know. Well, maybe we'll find out. And she said, well, if it is, we have to do the podcast at my office so she can just gaze at him for a while. But so we did a little bit of digging here, Hermie.
Yeah.
Because you had mentioned to me that, he did some sponsorships for you. And
He did commercials for me.
commercials for you. Well, we have got the commercials right now.
You mean
for
to
your
tell you
viewing
how we
pleasure.
did that?
Sure.
Do you want to hear the commercials first?
No, I want to hear how you did it.
I needed somebody. I've never been a big fan or advocate of advertising just to be advertising. I always like to, if you're going to advertise, have something to advertise.
Have a purpose.
And I was looking at something, trying to find a way to do something that nobody else was doing or could do. And back in those days, now we're talking about 1997, 1998, I was looking for a hook, something to advertise. And I had a friendship with Dave and Earl Hebner, twins that were probably the most famous wrestling referees in the history of the business.
They live in Richmond.
Live in Richmond, working for WWE for years. And through Dave Hebner, I told him what I wanted, and he put together a meeting with Dwayne and I at a house show WWE was doing. Like I said, this was at the time, I'm guessing, 96, 97, 98, right in there. So ultimately, I made a deal with Rock because at this particular time, he was just getting started.
He was a pebble. He wasn't a rock yet.
He was starting to make a way for himself and was doing okay, but was by no means the multi-millionaire that he is today. But I made a deal with him. Basically, I provided him a car to drive, Cadillac, in exchange for him doing commercials for me. And we filmed all of our commercials at Terry Labonte Chevrolet, which is actually owned by Rick Hendrick, down in Greensboro. So we always planned it whenever WWE was coming to Greensboro for a house show, we would set aside a day to tape commercials in Greensboro while Rocky was there. And so we did all those
cost
commercials.
you a bundle.
What do you mean?
I mean, The Rock? I mean, how much you pay The Rock?
I gave him a car to drive,
Like what kind of car?
a Cadillac.
Anyone he picked?
Anyone he picked.
For how long?
For as long as we did the commercials. I mean, about 2-3 years.
Now
And we would trade. We'd go down and trade. We'd make a trip down and trade about every 5-6 months. And then I'd sell the one he had and give him another one, whatever.
Did you ever sell the Cadillac saying this was The Rock's?
Every time.
Yeah. Did it get more? Fetch more?
I don't remember exactly, but I mean, most time we got him back. He wanted them with the gold-plated Cadillac package on them and the tinted windows. And so they were rocked out, I guess you could say.
Was it a vanity plate that was jabroni or, anything like that?
No. We ran dealer tags on it for him. Or maybe we titled it. I can't remember how we did it.
I think we titled them in Florida.
Yeah, we had to maybe title because he lived at that time down in South Florida.
Well, let me tell you something. We have an extra special moment here because we have captured those ads that you did with The Rock. Now, I see you in kind of standing there. But this is amazing. This is amazing tape that I had Brad Tuesday pull down last night. I was sitting in my bathroom. My wife was in the bedroom, and she hears me laughing, and I can't stop laughing. And she's like, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "You gotta come here. You gotta come here." And I played her these ads, and she was laughing too. And obviously, they had a good effect because it probably was very positive for your car dealership. But we are pulling out of history some clips here of your ads. And Brad, I think it's the time to unveil the first clip. This is a compilation of your ads with The Rock.
Says head on over to the People's Dealership, Sadler Auto Center, if you smell what The Rock is cooking. Sadler Auto Center is the best dealership in America. Sadler Auto Center is the people's dealership, and that Sadler Auto Center's sales and service is backed up by the most recognizable symbol of greatness on God's green earth, the Brahma Bull. So The Rock says this: if you want a great deal, go to where The Rock gets all his wheels from, Sadler Auto Center. If you smell what The Rock is cooking. Be sure to tell him that The Rock says our prices are rock bottom and lay the smack down on all the competition.
Did you write that?
Totally unscripted.
I wrote every one of those commercials.
Is that right?
Seriously, I did. Yeah.
They're great.
I thought it was unscripted.
No, I wrote word for word every one of those commercials, including the one that mine and your friend Greg Thrift did as the nerdy salesman.
That was a great one.
As a matter of fact, gentlemen, I have that one too. Brad, play that one.
This is local legend Greg Thrift that also worked for me for a time, and we brought him in to Greensboro that day to play the nerdy, obnoxious car salesman trying to sell a car to The Rock.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. Okay, Brett.
Hello, Mr. Rock. Can I help you?
Well, The Rock says
It doesn't matter if I can help you. You see, I know what you're looking for. A great car at a great price for the great one, right? Well, we're no jabronis around here. We're not checking you into the SmackDown Hotel. How about this, baby? Right here.
Well, The Rock says
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, sure, I can do it. I can knock a couple of bucks off for you. I smell what you're cooking. Hey, where are you going?
The Rock's going to Sadler Auto Center, jabroni.
Was it something I said?
That is the training video that Shep uses to train all his salesmen.
And they probably did that first take, too, because Thrift was perfect, and, of course, The Rock was perfect in that.
Did you write that one as well?
Every one.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
And so these would run on local stations around
Local
here?
cable television, yeah.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. And how long did you have him as your spokesperson?
I'm going to say
Maybe
2-3 years.
And it sell a lot of cars, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And plus, I got him, he came to Emporia at some point in time, and that's when we actually used the posters to promote. He came and did an appearance, and we set up a little small wrestling ring outside of the oil company offices that we are today. Back in those days, that was Sadler Auto Center of Emporia building. We set up a little ring outside of my office out there, and he came and did an appearance the day before a house show that night over in Richmond, Virginia. You know what I remember about that day?
What?
A couple things. We had several thousand people there.
I was there. Hermie called me, said, hey, I need a microphone. I need some music. So I took the Party Time music
thousands
bandwagon
of people
down
there.
Literally thousands.
And then after the appearance, Rock and I flew on a helicopter from the hospital in Emporia over to Richmond, Virginia. He had a house show that night where he wrestled the dopey mayor from Knoxville, Tennessee, Kane. They had an ongoing thing going on house shows that night, but Kane and Rock worked together on that loop of house shows back in those days, and he worked in that night.
He had a lot of things going on. He had one going on with Stone Cold Steve Austin where he brought in a beer truck and sprayed The Rock with Busch Light.
Him and old Vinnie Mac. Vince McMahon.
That's some pretty amazing stuff. Now, so you said it lasted a couple of years. What happened?
I'll tell you something else, too, before we get into that. What else I learned about The Rock that day is he is a huge Sam Cooke fan. Huge. He loves Sam Cooke music. But, he kind of just, I don't know what happened. I know we were doing the UWF shows. We had these great ad campaigns going on with The Rock. And then all of a sudden, I remember getting a phone call one day at the dealership, hey, go get that Cadillac. And I'm not real sure what ever happened with the Cadillac and The Rock.
Well, and this is when Dwayne Johnson is really starting to take off. He's building two careers. He's gold for Vince McMahon. What happened?
Well, I'm not really sure that I should talk much about that part of it on this show.
Oh, come on, man. It's a podcast.
As your lawyer, I advise you to talk about this on the show because this is what this show is about.
Well, we probably need to have a sidebar conversation about this first and discuss whether or not I should be talking. I'll tell you this part.
Come on, Herm.
I'll tell you this much.
Look, you wanted Memory Makers to sponsor, and I said last week if we ever get up to about 80,000 listenership, that Memory Makers could probably come in, and you want to get Boyd to come in. I mean, look.
I would say you have to admit, Senator and friend and my attorney, you have to admit that when it came to me and you forming partnerships to do this podcast and to form Sadler Stanley Racing, you had to know and understand, and you get reminders of it every week, how lightly I tread or how careful I am or how I was hesitant and remain hesitant to form partnerships with friends.
I understand that, but I mean, here you got a great thing going with the Brahma Bull. He's going in the right direction. You're going in the right direction. I mean, these are two universes aligning, not colliding. I mean, there's got to be a story here.
Here's a story.
Otherwise, he'd still be swimming in Cadillacs right now with the Sadler name on the side.
You want me to?
Or maybe he'd have the crack
The
truck.
problem is I can't tell part of the story without telling the whole story.
Then tell the whole story. I mean, what are we here at this podcast to talk about? Half truths, half stories. I mean, you and I promised. Look, I told the Q-tip story because you told me the night before our first podcast.
Q-tip
Tell 'em
story
about-
ain't got a damn thing to do with what we're talking
I'm
about
just
right
saying,
now.
I was being honest about
I'm
myself.
going to agree with Hermie on that one, man.
Shut up, Shep.
Look, here's
invited you, Shep.
Look. So
Myself.
Welcome aboard.
Rocky and I became friends, and
Rocky.
outside the Rock, Dwayne. I called him Rocky.
Oh, really?
Well, he was Rocky Maivia before he was The Rock. So he was Rocky.
Yeah. It sounded like they had a personal relationship. Obviously, you guys were friends.
Sure. I mean, my wife and I went down and stayed in his home in South Florida, and we became friends, no question. Through the course of this relationship of him doing commercials and things and us providing cars, over the course of time, he started to follow my racing career. He became interested, and we started having conversations through that period about how cool it would be to form a partnership and own a NASCAR team together.
Wow. How
Through
awesome would that have been?
long through that portion of time. Now I'm talking about 1998, late into 1999, even heading into 2000. I had started to drive a little bit for a friend of mine in racing named Joe Bessie. Joe owned a race team, Joe Bessie Motorsports, competing in the NASCAR at the time, Winston Cup Series. So, and actually Rocky and his wife at the time, Danny, they're no longer together, have a beautiful child together, however. They came to Homestead to watch me race in November of 1999. Prior to that, we started having conversations about racing and a partnership. So we finally decided one day we want to put together a way to have a partnership for us to co-own a team that, Hermie, you will drive for and compete in NASCAR. Sure. So I put together things very, very quickly in a short period of time. Basically, I had put that deal together where we were basically going to use his name and likeness. And I had investors and merchandise opportunities put together to trade off of his name and likeness, where he was not obligated for not $1 out of pocket financially. And so we put all these things together. I actually went probably in maybe September of that year, went to the WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, and met with merchandisers in the WWE merchandise department about shirts, T-shirts, other items that we were going to trademark and merchandise to sell and raise money to fund our race operations partly. And so I'd done all that. I had made a deal to purchase Joe Bessie Motorsports, purchase the race team from him, and do a lease agreement on the shop in the building that he were in. As far as contracts, Rock and I and Danny had worked through the majority of that. The only piece of paper that had been signed was a letter of intent that I intended to do this and set it up this way. Rock intended to do this, and these were his obligations that were only appearances and promotions. It was nothing financially on his end.
Hey, that's a win-win opportunity for both.
Okay.
Both sides.
Sounds great.
We had
I didn't get this deal on our race.
So we rolled all the way through the year 2000 putting all this together. We actually had gone so far as to schedule a press conference in December of 2000 out at the Concord Mills Mall in Concord, North Carolina, right across the street from the Charlotte Motor Speedway. So I had all my investors, I had the merchandise deals, I had bought the race team, I had hired a crew chief, I had done all these things. And we had Rocky and I were talking daily about all of our stuff.
Did he talk in the third person? Like, The Rock really likes this deal. The Rock really wants to have a car.
It's easy for you to have fun at my expense, but
No, so The Rock is nowhere near me, so I can make this. But he's great. I love The Rock.
So we had all these things going until one day out of the blue, Rock and I we were, because he was traveling doing WWE and I had a car dealership and I was racing. So we had picked a time out daily that we would talk, whether it be 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, maybe before his shows at night. So I went 2 days in a row and was unable to reach him. So I started getting concerned. Then a couple days later, I got a letter from a guy named Augie Ligori from WWE that basically was a cease and desist letter.
What?
Telling me that not only was my planned partnership with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson done, I was no longer allowed to communicate with him.
You're kidding me.
I'm not kidding you. So
what brought that about?
Well, I had no choice at the time but to assume, and I guess I wrongly assumed, that I had no way of knowing exactly what Rocky's deal was with WWE or who owned the rights to what or who could or could not do what. I was only going off of what
The Rock was doing.
What we were doing together.
What he was cooking.
And I assumed that he had every right to do what we were talking about doing. My assumption is that it got to Vince, what we were talking about doing, and maybe Rocky hadn't communicated with him on every aspect of it, or maybe any aspect of it, I don't know. So I get this letter from Augie Ligori, who I'd never met.
But you'd been to Connecticut and met with merch people and all of that.
Sure.
I mean, there has to be some coordination. I heard Vince McMahon had his hand in everything.
Sure.
Up there.
So ultimately, they sent me this letter. So I end up, and I don't remember all the details of how I did it, but I ended up getting a meeting with Vince at a Monday Night Raw in Norfolk. About a month after all this went down, they swung through Norfolk for Monday Night Raw, and maybe through my attorney and maybe through Augie Ligori, they set up Vince will talk to you at Monday Night Raw. So I went to Norfolk, sat in his office, and showed him all of my documents, my paperwork, my contracts, my meetings with WWE merchandise, my dealings with Rocky and Danny, and all the things we were doing. And also the fact that I had made, for the majority of my life, I made my living at the NASCAR track. And I was proud of the fact that in all my years of being a driver, a competitor, a owner, TV personality, all those things, never took anything from anybody, never mistreated anybody, never owed anybody any money. But I had made a deal with Joe Bessie to buy this equipment, shop, lease, all those things. But while Vince McMahon was, I thought, he felt my pain, I guess you could say, on how I was led down the path I was led to. So I went and explained all that to him, and he said, "I'll get back to you in a day or two." So I took him at his word.
Glimmer of hope.
Yeah, that maybe he'll talk to Rocky, and Rocky will go have a conversation with him, and we'll get this cleared up and move on.
I mean, there had to be. I mean, there's huge upside to WWE, WWF. I don't know which one it was at the time. There had to be huge upside for them getting into the race business, because most of the people who love racing love wrestling, and I just don't see why this would be a negative.
Well, the negative is apparently that it wasn't Vince's idea, and it wasn't Vince in charge of it from start to finish, and wasn't, how was he going to benefit or profit from it? But so their contention was that even though I had a letter of intent signed by Dwayne and Danny on what we were intending to do, his contention was Rocky was not legally able to sign such a document because he didn't own the rights to the trademarks and things that he was putting up as part of the deal.
You're saying Vince owned the trademark
Vince
of
owned
The Rock.
all that. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So he owned his personality, basically.
So, yes. Which I knew all that. I mean, I've been around enough to know. I mean,
I guess they're the ones that develop the personality, develop the storylines, do all that stuff.
That's
So he has
never
right to
been, I never would or was questioning whether or not Rock had a huge say in the fact that he owned that character and that personality at that time. And I think through the years, he and Rocky, Rocky got so big, they've worked that out, and he can whatever. But at that time, but why would I think that Rock was doing all this and keeping Vince in the dark? He would never. And to your point, the fact that I had gone to WWE headquarters, and done all this stuff, but ultimately, so I went and met with Vince, took all my paperwork. Didn't take a lawyer, but I tried to keep it friendly. And he said, "We'll get back to you," but ultimately nobody ever got back to me.
So you never got an answer. You just
never got an answer.
Never got
not
anything.
on the dotted line.
Not another. And
acted like they never had even met you.
Yeah, pretty
And
much.
Hermie, don't
What
I
about The
remember
Rock?
right? That actually led over into other talent. Weren't you told?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
But I did see Rocky that night at the building, because he had been told not to speak to me, and I was told not to speak to him. And all he said to me was, "I know you're mad at me, and I'm sorry." That's what he said.
Those were his last words? Mm-hmm. The last time you talked to the Rocky.
Last time I actually had a face-to-face conversation with him, this was, I'm guessing, in the spring of 2001. Maybe something like that.
Sounds like an Amish divorce. They just pull them apart and don't let them talk again, and somebody else gives the reasons. That is a wild story, Hermie.
So how did you unwind all of everything that you had wound up?
Well, my choice back in those days were very simple. I could take my losses and mitigate myself out of them, and which I ultimately did. I fulfilled my obligations to Joe Bessie and to everybody that I had made commitments to the tune of close to $1 million.
So you bought the team.
Yeah.
And you leased the shop. And
I bought the team, and then I sold it off over the course of the next 18 months, car by car, piece by piece.
wow.
And the people that I had hired, the ones that couldn't get other jobs, I paid them until they got other jobs. And if a guy was supposed to make $100,000 for me and sign somewhere else for 75, I paid him 25.
And you're such good friends with so many great wrestlers. Double J, Jeff Jarrett, Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Yeah.
All of these things, demonstrate, and I'm your friend, and Shep, you'd say the same thing. There's nobody more honest and fair with friendship than you are. But then to have this kind of the door just shuts, everything that you guys had built together, or even were negotiating, but really had built together in that room of trust and the promos that he was doing for your dealership at the time, just cut off like a light switch.
Just like that. And to this day, that was
20 years ago.
Over 20 years ago, I have not spoken to him since.
Well, I know Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is listening to this podcast because he has a lot of time on his hands. So if he ever listens to this story, it's kind of heartbreaking. And we'd love to hear from him. And it's a shame because you know what? One of the things I value the most is your friendship and your honesty. And I'd go into any business with you. We're in two right now. And
this circles
you're
back
the best guy to do it with.
I circle back this to you because I told you when we started these joint ventures together that I'm not a good partner because I learned a valuable lesson in that it, both people, their goals and wishes and dreams have to align, and you have to have a high level of trust with somebody. Yeah. And I have treaded lightly in my life ever since then because back in that time, I was sitting there in the middle. I was racing, working, I had a family. Along about the same time, Haley was diagnosed with her issue. And then I'm sitting here, in my opinion, left holding $1 million bag of crap. Yeah. So what do I do now? And so I had to figure out quickly. And my other choice, I go back to what I said, I could either take it and mitigate out of it piece by piece by piece, which took me 5 years.
Or you could have walked away and just eaten the breach of contract or made them do what they did to you to people that you'd made those deals with.
That wasn't an option for me at that time.
Obviously, and that's character and integrity right there for you.
My two options were, option B, I had to, because of the relationships I had with the people in the NASCAR industry. Yeah. If I had hired Bill Stanley to come work for me as the team attorney and the team PR person, and you had a contract for $50,000 a year, you were counting on me for that money. Right. I had to pay you that money. My options were to go about that and to learn a valuable lesson and walk on, or I could have been baited into doing what I know Vince McMahon does best when it comes to legal matters, and that is he'll shuffle paper on my ass for 5 years until I'm broke. Mm-hmm.
Well, and when you get to that position, you can say, F you, sue me. And and
that's what
whoever
happened.
has the longevity to actually stand up against that.
I didn't have the funds
to do that.
At that time. I was going to put my family, in my opinion, in further jeopardy by not only foolishly, I look back now, I should have done. Rocky and I should have gone and sat down with Vince on day one. I just assumed, as close as him and Rock were, and the fact that we were working with the WWE people on design of all this merchandise and all that, and the other investors that I had brought in, other sponsors I had brought in, they were all being approved by the WWE hierarchy of what we were going to use.
But not Vince.
Apparently not Vince.
Huh. And then,
so,
and of course, a lot of that is your own opinion. I'm sure he has another viewpoint.
Sure,
but this is just shocking because if you think about it, in the last podcast you even mentioned, what if, when you got spun out with Kenny at the first Homestead race, what if? I mean, what if this team had got together? What would it be right now? What could it have been actually in a time where after 2001, when we lost Dale, that's probably when you needed that kind of personality team in the sport the most, and they missed that opportunity. That's a heartbreaker.
That was a big deal, made about last year about Michael Jordan coming into the sport. That would have been the closest thing to Michael Jordan coming into NASCAR racing 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, it would have been bigger back in that day.
And I think it just speaks to, and you touched on it too, Bill, the character of Hermie. I mean, he took that situation, he owned it. He fulfilled his obligations, and it to me, it goes a long ways getting back to the lawsuit. Hermie has just always stood for principles, for doing the right thing, and for standing up for the little guy. And when you have employees that you're supplementing their income when they find a new job because it's maybe less than what he had agreed upon, that certainly says a whole lot to the character of Hermie Sadler.
Well, and when you get into a partnership with Hermie, I'll tell you just from my experience, he's bossy as hell, but he's bossy as hell and still lets you come to the conclusion that he thinks is the right one, and he's always right about it. It's a great relationship. It's honest, and quite frankly, we know where each other's lane is. We take each other's advice, and we make decisions in a joint manner. I think Rock's missing out on something that I'm getting the benefit of now.
No question.
Is that ability to enjoy it, actually. We enjoy doing this podcast. I run this side of the show. We enjoy the racing. He runs that side of the show. We consult with each other on 100% of everything. The Rock, is a jabroni for losing out on this partnership, because I think that would have been so spectacular, not just for you, Hermie, and the experience, but really for NASCAR, really for wrestling.
I'll say this. I truly believe in my heart that he was devastated at the position that he knew he put me in 20 years ago.
Yeah.
He didn't have a choice. I mean,
I don't
Vince
think he had a
says,
choice. Yeah.
this is what you're doing. You stay away from Hermie. He's a gangster. And, you know, and I truly believe, just based on some of the comments that mutual friends of ours have heard him say, actually, Elliott saw him maybe a couple years after that. He was at Texas Motor Speedway waving a green flag, maybe promoting a movie. And he made a comment to Elliott, you know, something along the lines of, man, I know your brother hates me, you know, and rightfully so.
And I'm sure you don't hate him for
I do
it
not.
either. No.
I know it's not. Only thing that disappoints me still to this day is that I don't want or need one penny from him. I lost that money, recovered what I could, made the best of it. I chalked it up to like my dad tells me sometimes you just got to take your losses, learn your lessons, and move on. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. But the only thing that disappoints me to this day is that I wonder now how good of friends we really were. Only because I would have, at some point in time, I certainly wouldn't have waited 20 years, and I certainly wouldn't have waited to become a multimillionaire. But I would have, at some point in time, picked up the phone and called him if the shoe be on the other foot and say, just so you know, this is what happened, and I'm sorry.
So you just want an explanation?
I would like an explanation. That's all. And it won't help. It's not going to change anything.
Nope.
But that is the reason, just so you know, just when we talk about partnerships and friendships and mingling the two together and making decisions, I'm gun shy because I got roasted on that deal, not just friendship-wise, but financially, to a point where it put my family in jeopardy. And I had to figure out how to navigate out of that. And I mean, you never get back $1 million, but that really formed or framed a lot of my beliefs. And Shep brought up a good point. I never have really even thought about correlating that experience to me or us suing the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. But in that case, Vince McMahon was the governor. He was Goliath, and I was David. And he force-fed me to a position where I could submit or try to fight. And I did not have the resources to fight.
Well, in my opinion, that was a bad decision on his part. It's a sad ending to it.
His loss.
Funny tale. I mean, and those are great commercials and a great start. And you mentioned it yourself. You know, when you look back on something, you always want to know that you maintained your character and integrity. That's what my dad says. The only thing you keep with you, and when you give it away, you can't get it back. And number two, that friendships really are what matter most, because that's what you take with you, not the dollar in your pocket or the dollar you hand out that you lost. And then to look back on this and go, were we really friends? That's the saddest question to ask yourself of them all. And then, then that's the heartbreaking part of the end of this story.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, I think it's actually a silver lining, because that experience led into all the traits that we just talked about, the ethics, the doing the right thing, the standing up for the little guy. I think that has developed all of the right traits that you would want in a local politician.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And listen, I am so glad we talked about this. And Hermie, I'm glad I have never heard this story before. I guess, Shep, you've heard, and you were there. You were part of that.
Part of it.
You know, when we started Sadler Stanley Racing, a.k.a. Stanley Sadler Racing, now I see where you were coming from in the long discussions and talks that we had about this, and it makes perfect sense. But I'm richer for it in terms of the life experience that I get and to be able to be your partner. So his loss, The Rock's loss, is the stand man's gain, and the stand man will not let him become let down. The stand man is not a jabroni. And so, the other thing is that you have great relationships, as I said, with other wrestlers as well. as well. Next podcast, I've grabbed another piece of advertising that we'll go over, because this has been a great discussion. We're trying to, of course, bring new structure. We are exploding in terms of the numbers of people that are listening to us each week, and we're glad and very proud of that. We're adding on some new value here, because, Hermie, you really are the hook here, and I love talking to you. So we're going to add a couple things. I'm also surprising you with this before we go to break, and then we come back with Joe Morrissey. We're going to have a couple new features. One is Hermie's answer machine, where we're going to, through Facebook.
What could possibly go wrong? That could be
and it's
dangerous.
not Hermie's mailbox or Hermie's text or voicemail. Now, this is Hermie's answer machine, because we're throwing back to where you had that answer machine on that table, that big thing. It had a mahogany fake finish on it. And we're going to ask people that listen to us to go to our Facebook page, Leaning Right and Turning Left, leave a recording on Hermie's answer machine. Say whatever you want. Be as crazy as you want to be as funny as you want to be. Ask him a question. Make a statement that Hermie can comment about. And we're going to play it here in the next episodes every week. And if you get your answer machine message on there, we're going to send you some I almost did it, Sadler Stanley merch, some racing merch. But so we're gonna get your take on what people say. We're gonna let that fan participation be there. The second thing, Hermie, that we're going to be doing here, I love being the guy that does.
You're doing it right now.
He does the racing. I do the podcast.
You just talked about how sensitive I am about partnerships, and now you're telling me.
He is telling you
what we're going to do.
Did you approve the mailbox?
No.
I'm your content guy. The second thing is, I love listening to Hermie's view on life, or definition of something, or telling me something that I don't know. If I give him, what's the difference between, what is camber? We did this one time, and I was really thinking about this, and I made the remark to my wife, Laura, that it's really, when I get the answer, it's hermetology, and that there is a special, distinct way that Hermie answers something in a way, or gives me a definition or a new way to look at something else. So we're also going to do a thing called hermetology. You
mean all the reasons that I told you why it was not a good idea to accept $500,000 for a lawsuit you were trying to take on?
That's another hermetology.
That's my fault.
Yeah. That's another hermetology episode. But we're going to ask and ask our fans.
If you're going to turn down $500,000, I need to make sure he understands.
That is another story.
Doing a good thing by doing that.
Well,
that's another story. But see, friendship matters more.
Yeah.
Matters more to me. And also honor and integrity. But we're going to do hermetology. We're going to have him. We're going to ask him questions. If the fans and the listeners have questions about what is this compared to that, we want them to send that in as well. And we're going to fire those at you. So we're going to be adding more structure as we go on. And especially it's going to be Hermie-oriented, Hermie-centered.
I don't
Hermie
see
universe.
Anything going wrong with these new segments.
Not at all. And if they bomb, then we'll just move on to the next idea that I have when I've been drinking.
Look, we need to get Senator Morrissey on, but before we do that, I want to remind everybody that Pace-O-Matic is an entertainment company which develops gaming software that players love to play and can use their skills to win every single time. Plus, these games of skill provide vital revenue to keep family-owned businesses like bars, restaurants, and convenience stores thriving, and we appreciate Pace-O-Matic for helping give us this platform. So, Senator, we'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll have Senator Morrissey on, and then we'll close with a short leaning right moment and a turning left moment to wrap up today's podcast.
Fighting Joe is on the show.
Fighting Joe.
Stay
Coming
tuned.
up next, Joe Morrissey.
Are you feeling stuck making minimum payments on your credit card debt? SaveWithConrad.com can help, and you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this. NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Oh, and did I mention no house payments for 2 months? Get rid of your credit card debt and lower your monthly payments right now at SaveWithConrad.com.
Hi, folks. This is Hermie Sadler. Thanks for listening to our all-new podcast, Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator. I hope you are enjoying the show as much as Senator Stanley and I enjoy bringing it to you. Whether you're a family traveling together or a truck driver hauling freight up and down the highway, I hope you will take the time to visit one of our Sadler Travel Plaza locations in Virginia and North Carolina. Sadler Travel Plaza locations are licensed dealer locations for Pilot Travel Centers, and we also carry Shell Motiva petroleum products for our four-wheel friends. We pride ourselves on providing one-stop shopping for service, food, and entertainment. Our food options include Five Guys Burgers and Fries, Quiznos, Dairy Queen, Hermie Sadler's Faux Show Bar and Grill, Victory Lane Restaurant, Hunt Brothers Pizza, Dunkin' Donuts, and much, much more. Our locations include Sadler Travel Plaza in South Hill, located off I-85 at Exit 12, the Sadler Travel Plaza of Emporia, which is conveniently located on exit 11B off I-95, and Sadler Travel Plaza on Highway 58 in Suffolk. We also have our North Carolina location, Sadler Travel Plaza in Dunn, North Carolina. That's exit 75 off I-95. We appreciate all of our customers, and Bill and I appreciate you listening to Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace-O-Matic. And welcome back as we continue with another edition of Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace-O-Matic. Interesting discussion in the first segment, and actually Senator talked about a few things that I never thought I would talk about in a public forum.
Told you I can surprise you with some things I thought about. See, this is what happens when I think things through and I have enough time to do it. And then work with Brad overnight, and turned out pretty well. I think it's great. And what a conversation! And now we get to add to it with an incredible guest, a friend of mine. I've known this guest for over 25 years. Currently, he's a sitting state senator, Democrat, our first Democrat on this show.
Brave.
Yes,
brave.
This man is
Especially
fearless.
this one.
He is fearless. He's from the 16th Senate District. He's been there since being elected in 2020. He was elected to the Senate after serving 8 years in the Virginia House of Delegates. A remarkable career there, full of stories and revelations and shocking moments. But not just that in politics. He's a former prosecutor. He was a Commonwealth attorney in the city of Richmond. He was a defense lawyer. He's won over 50 jury trials, criminal jury trials. He'll tell you all about that. Law professor in foreign countries. He's the host of the Fighting Joe Morrissey radio show, which is you can hear daily at noon on the John Fredericks Radio Network, the JFN Network. What doesn't this guest do? What hasn't he done? And quite frankly, the real question is, what won't he do in the future? My good friend, controversial, but you know why? Because they call him Fighting Joe. Fighting Joe Morrissey. Joe Morrissey, welcome to the Sadler and the Senator
Well,
podcast.
It's wonderful to be with you, gentlemen, this morning. Shep, I just met you. Nice to be with you. Hermie, we have spoken many times. An honor to be on your show. And Bill, always a pleasure to be with my colleague in the state Senate. And thank you for that introduction. Only thing I want to correct, I haven't won 50 jury trials.
I knew it.
At one time I won 54 jury trials in a row, and I have won over 300 jury trials, including 100 first-degree murder trials. Just saying.
Wow. You know,
And we can tell Senator Morrissey is quite humble, much like you, Bill.
I believe I underwrote this for a purpose, but I knew he was going to correct me if I got any of that wrong, and I knew that was probably the thing. You may want to fire me right now as your lawyer and hire him.
Now I'm going to keep you a little while.
I mean, he's had an incredible legal career. We're going to try to dive into that as well. We've got so much to talk about with Joe. I'm going to tell you right now, he's one of my absolute favorite people of all time. Has been a great friend for many, many, many years. And then when he came over to the Senate, they said he couldn't beat the incumbent. The incumbent was in his own party. And, you know, he just defies the odds. If someone says the word can't to Joe Morrissey, he takes off the apostrophe and the T and makes it a can. I mean, that's something that you've got to give a gentleman like this. And also, there's a lot of people that love him, a lot of people that don't love him. And I don't care wherever you fall, whether you like him or not, but you're going to respect him because he's a true man to his word. He's also a man of principle when it comes to political principles that he holds dear, and he's not afraid to share them, but he's also not afraid to work across the aisle when it's not only appropriate but the right thing to do. And in this day and age, we don't have a lot of that going on, and so to have Joe Morrissey in the Senate has been a breath of fresh air for me, and actually somebody that I can hang out with and talk, because a lot of those people, you know, you might not go out to dinner with all the time. But I want to just start off, I mean, he's the son of a cardiologist, William F. Morrissey, his wife Jean. Actually, his claim to fame in his ancestry that he told me was that he was a descendant from John. His nickname was Old Smoke Morrissey, a 19th century United States congressman and one-time bare knuckle boxer.
That's
Is
correct,
that correct,
Bill.
Joe?
Actually, John Morrissey's my great-great-great-uncle, and he was not only a bare knuckle boxer, but he was the heavyweight boxing champion of the world in the mid-19th century when they boxed bare knuckles. Not a subcategory, the heavyweight boxing champion of the world, became a United States congressman, bodyguard to Abraham Lincoln. And my favorite story, he was a gambler. He started the Saratoga racetrack, you know.
Oh, wow. Was he involved in skill games at all?
He would have been, but he was featured in the movie Five Gangs of New York, and quite the character. Died at an early age, early 50s, but led a full life. And I've got a picture of Old Smoke and 10 other heavyweight boxing champions of the world, from Frazier to Muhammad Ali, out of my office here. So the next time you two are down here, you got to come in and stop by the offices of Fighting Joe Morrissey.
I've actually been honored to come into the Morrissey Shrine. It's kind of like the Sadler Shrine over there behind Sadler Oral Brothers. But he's got boxing gloves that are actually signed by heavyweight champions as well. He's earned the name Fighting Joe.
Fighting Joe.
And let me tell you something, just before we go deep diving into his history, I have gone with him on occasion, had the occasion to be with him, and he says, hey, come on, we're going to go do something out in my district. And this was actually when he was in the House of Delegates. And we drive up into a neighborhood, and as soon as he drives up, and it's an inner city neighborhood, as soon as he gets out of the car, a crowd forms around him, and they want to touch him, want to talk to him. He's talking to everybody. He pops open the trunk. He's got like 100 knapsacks for kids with school supplies in them, and he's handing it out to the children. It was an amazing thing to watch as a politician, but also the genuine affection that people that he represents, that they have for him, is, I think, the envy of any elected official. When I saw that, I was sitting there saying, how do I get an old Jaguar and fill the trunk full of knapsacks full of supplies for children? And I must admit that as soon as I went home to my district, I bought about 75 knapsacks, filled them up with pencils, paper, notebooks, everything, and did the exact same thing. But not only, you'd say that's a good political move, but man, he means it, and he's trying to make a difference in the people's lives that, quite frankly, get left out in the cold, in the same way that sometimes politically people in Southwest Virginia or Southside Virginia get ignored. Joe is one of those people that is standing up and saying, you're not going to ignore these people. I represent them. They deserve a voice. And then they get Fighting Joe. I mean, it's really, hopefully I read that just like you wrote it, Joe.
That's kind of you to say, Bill, it's kind of you to say that, but actually it's the way I live. Hermie, when I came into the Senate, I remember being interviewed by a reporter here in Richmond, and he said, what's one thing that you want to get done? And I talked about, first thing out of my mouth was broadband expansion. And he goes, wait, that's not a problem in Central Virginia, in Richmond, Henrico, Chesterfield. No, but it's a problem in the western part of our state. And as a state senator, my fidelity, my loyalty, my faithfulness is to the Commonwealth of Virginia and party second. Always been that way and always will. And improving broadband in Southwest Virginia makes easier access for jobs, housing, schooling, and it makes the Commonwealth better. So that's the way I roll. And Bill, I appreciate you saying that. And I would be remiss, Hermie, if I didn't say this. I've done almost everything I've wanted to do in my life except for race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So you've won, top 10, 45 top 10 places. That's the only thing left for me to do is to race out at Richmond International Raceway.
We have an open seat in the Sadler Stanley Racing open wheel modified car that every time that I bring a guest on, like last week we had Kenny Wallace on, we had Ryan Newman on in the past, and everybody in the racing arena that we interview, Bill is quick to offer them the seat for a race. And so I'm offering you, Senator Morrissey, an opportunity to hop in the seat of the Sadler Stanley Racing open wheel modified, and Bill has agreed to pay the bill, and he'll do all the funding, pay you the six-figure salary, Joe, that you deserve as a race car driver. And so I say it's a win-win for everybody.
Can we start him in the simulator first?
No, we're going right to the track.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show, everybody. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next week.
Hey, Joe, I've known you quite some time, but obviously most of our one-on-one and conversation and interactions have been related to or around the issue of skill games and stuff that we have going on. And two things about you that have always stood out to me that I respect and admire. Certainly, we're not always going to agree on everything. Nobody does. That's really what makes it how you get things done. You share other people's ideas and experiences, and you try to, find a way. But two things that stand out to me when people ask me about you. Number one, you're not afraid to let people know your personal feelings on things and how they may affect people in your district or other people that you know, even though it may not be, quote unquote, along the party line. And number two, you're not afraid to fight. I guess Fighting Joe is kind of the moniker we're talking about. You're not afraid to stand up. I watched you many times stand up and bring more, more light on issues from another side that you would not expect to hear within the chamber of the Senate and otherwise from a Democrat. And so as a lifelong Virginian operating small businesses, raising my family here, I have a child with special needs, all these other things. I think it's great to have somebody like you that, that people can talk to, and whether we agree or not, you're going to look to the best interest of the Commonwealth as a whole and not be afraid to say what's on your mind, even if it's not the popular thing to say.
Thanks for saying that. And, particularly coming from you, I remember Bill and I were talking about something both of us were involved in, and that was the skilled games. And, in my district, my Senate district, we have the big boxes. There was a casino trying to come into South Richmond. We've got Rosie's right up the street within a stone's throw from my office. But it was the small guy, the one that, the guy that has a convenience store or the truck stop or the restaurant that were really being prejudiced against. And while Bill and you were down in Southwest Virginia fighting it, I was outside of the then Democratic Attorney General Mark Herring's office with 100 convenience store operators behind me saying, what about these little guys? So, Hermie, I've always stood up and fought for the little guy. I tell my children, no, your teachers are right. You do not fight in school, with the exception. If you ever see somebody bullying somebody, you have an obligation to step in, okay, and defend that person, and that transcends through my legislation. Bill knows this. We passed legislation that allowed for people that had certain special needs, like folks that were on the autism spectrum, to get that evidence in during a guilt or innocence phase, not sentencing, guilt or innocence phase of the trial, because once again, that's what I think. Government shouldn't be stepping in in all aspects of our lives, but to help people that are in need, yes. And that's what I'm going to continue to do, and that's the way I raise my kids.
Senator Joe, this is Shep. I've got a question for you.
Fighting Joe.
Oh, Fighting Joe, that's right.
Fighting. Take off
you've
the
got
G.
an election coming up next November. What do you think some of the main issues are going to be?
I think that's a. Let me just give you a little backdrop to it. All the senators are up for re-election. Okay, and what's interesting is this: my district, Shep, was, as Bill knows, was cut in half. Both districts become D+12 districts, so they're safe districts in November. But here was option one for me. Option one: stay right where I was in Chester, keep my kids in the same school district, not move the kids to another school, and have no primary opponent, and win without opposition in November. Option one. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it, Bill? Option two.
Yeah, I like that one better.
Option two, move my kids to a new school district, move so I can continue to represent Petersburg and Hopewell, pick up Surrey, Sussex, Charles City County, guaranteed opposition with La Cherise Aird and her $1.5 million from Michael Bills, and have a fight on my hands. What option do you think I chose?
The safe one.
Nope.
Say the safe one.
Reading his Wikipedia page, I'm going to say he went with option 2. Have you reviewed your Wikipedia page?
I think he wrote it.
No.
Well, going by, he took all of your lead up on your lead ins today. He took all your thunder away. He probably did write his own Wikipedia
Man,
page.
it was pretty
I
badass. No, I'm sure he took
I
option
did
2.
because I've spent so much time investing in Petersburg. I'm trying to get the casino for them now. I was down there today, right before I came on your podcast, speaking to a couple of government classes, broke most of the traffic laws between Petersburg and Richmond to get back here for your show. But no, life is not about playing it safe. Geez, you know that more than anybody, Hermie. You lean right, turn left. It's not about playing safe. I teach my children, we cannot, literally, in my house, the kids cannot use the word can't. It's a 4-letter word. It's a dirty word. You cannot say can't in my house. You can say, I'm having difficulty, I need some help. But I'm not playing it safe, and there's a lot of reasons to take option 2, and I'm doing that. But Shep, back to your question, what do I think the issues are? Remember, I don't know if we're going to have any House races in November. Every day that we go on and the district courts don't rule that way, less likely.
And what he's saying is right now there's a pending lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the redistricting, that we should have actually one man, one vote, and should have those elections a year early, at least for the House of Delegates, because the Constitution requires that, filed by Paul Goldman, currently pending in the federal court, and it's been back and forth like a tennis match.
Question. So is this like gerrymandering? Is this...
Well, it's not like gerrymandering.
It's not. All?
Well, what we did was we created a commission that was supposed to do it independently. I served on that commission. We locked up the citizens. They just did not know what 11th hour back, working hard on this stuff was. So I think they got very discouraged very quickly. So the Supreme Court did it and didn't care about incumbencies, and put basically almost half of, I think, the sitting senators and House of Delegate members together in districts. And so what Joe's talking about is there's an open district that he's moving down to out of his safe space. He's going to allow one of his Democrat friends to move into that district. Gotcha. And rather than take it easy, the easy road, he's making it a challenge. And I'm reminded 10 years ago in redistricting, the Democrats, of which jersey color he wears, tried to redistrict me out after my first year as a senator. I could have stayed in the 19th, but would have had a primary against a Republican, or I could have dropped down, represented most of the place that was still my area at the time in the first year, take on an incumbent Democrat, been there for 20 years, and I ended up beating him by 644 votes. So I know exactly what Joe's talking about. Look, you got to take chances. If you're going to make a difference, that's what he's saying.
Shep, one of the issues I think that will come up, we're going to continue the trend that began in 2021 with Governor Youngkin, and that is more family parent participation in school boards and school districts. That's going to be, it's a winning issue, particularly for Republicans. They will continue that. I am still undecided on whether or not abortion will be an issue in 2023. It's got upsides and downsides for politicians. But if you look at what Governor Youngkin was successful on in November 21, there's going to be a lot of people trying to repeat that running in 2023. And now here's what I've seen. In primaries, you're going to try to get this. This is the norm. You're going to try to get people that are Republicans to go far, far right in their primary, and then Democrats, you're going to try to get them to go far, far left in the primaries. I've always thought that was the wrong approach. Tell them what you're going to do if you get elected in November, and don't play just to your base, play to your entire constituency. So we'll see. I think school modernization is going to be a very big issue. That's important to my friend Bill. I think.
And you've led on that as well, Joe. I mean, I appreciate all your support. You were one of the first ones there when no one else was on modernizing our schools and the need for that to create that workforce pipeline that we're lagging in. And quite frankly, Governor Youngkin's report demonstrates we've got a lot of work to make up on to make sure our kids are getting the world-class education they deserve in Virginia.
And, you know, Bill, we're opening a $168 million school in August here in Mecklenburg County, where we're consolidating 2 schools. And it was all done with no tax increase, a lot of support from Microsoft. So I can relate exactly what you're saying about modernizing the school.
Well, it's part of our state constitution guarantees it. But let me just say this, and I think it plays well into what Hermie was asking earlier. I look at issues and I say, what's best for Virginia? Example, Governor Youngkin wanted to reopen schools, okay? And now what's interesting is all of the empirical evidence that is coming out shows that it was a disaster to close the schools, even more so for people of black and brown tinge to their skin. Disaster, okay? But there were only 2 Democrats that supported Youngkin's move to reopen schools. Chap Peterson was one, and you're speaking to the other. And now people realize we were absolutely right in doing that. So I see the continued trend in education issues being at the forefront in 2023. And that's... Bill, what do you think? I mean, what do you think of it?
No, I totally agree with you. I think education is going to be at the forefront because I don't think we've solved our problems. We've created more. We'll have more problems to solve, and somebody's got to have a solution and be willing to act on it and to get things done, not have the gridlock or the lockup that we've kind of had this year with Republican in the governor's mansion and a split House and Senate. We've got to learn again to work together for the Commonwealth, for the common good. And so Joe's exactly right. I think the economy, especially in 2023, is going to be an issue because, everything I'm seeing is inflation's not going to go away, high gas prices aren't going to go away, and we're going to have perhaps a recession. What are we going to do with that? How are we going to spend our money more wisely? Right now, we're spending our money, the taxpayer money, and the influx and the surplus that we have in my mind, like drunken sailors in Singapore. Not kind of looking down the road so much to say, hey, maybe we need to hold back on some of our spending because once we start spending, we can't stop. But when the revenues start shrinking up because we have people that have lost jobs and businesses have closed, it's going to be a rude awakening for Virginia. And then what do we do next? Where do we prioritize those monies and where do we prioritize our focus? And so Joe's exactly right on that. And again, what you're hearing out of Joe is exactly what we need on both sides, which is a nonpartisan viewpoint. You can be a Democrat or Republican, but you still say these issues are nonpartisan. We need to focus on them. And even in Governor Youngkin's report, which came out, and we'll talk about that in the next segment of the show even in more detail, when an independent, study commissioned by the Executive Order No. 1 through his administration pointed out deficiencies, what we had were a lot of the Democrats saying, nope, this is a joke, this is a dog whistle, dismissing it rather than looking at that and saying, okay, what can we together do better? And but I know Joe is the kind of guy that says, what can we do better together than he is pointing fingers on the other side of the aisle. There are times to be partisan, and Joe can be partisan, but and so can I. But there are more often times than not where Joe's not partisan, where I'm not partisan, where we need more of the people that wear the same colored jerseys as we do to be the same way.
The biggest thing that concerns me, I've been spending a lot of time in Richmond over the last 3 years on this skill game issue only because I didn't like the government going down a path of being able to, as we have said, pick winners and losers. For instance, we've got a Rosie's that broke ground in Emporia last week in my hometown, which is fine. And I welcome them to come spend that $30 million investment in my community, but not at the expense of coming in with a government-enabled monopoly. And they want to talk about adding 100 jobs. Well, a good portion of those jobs are going to be taken away from other small business owners in our area, because Rosie's comes in before our lawsuit, Bill, with a monopoly on the gaming industry, which means they have to go to Rosie's to play games, which means they're also going to go to their restaurants, go to their bars, spend money at those places. And the frustrating thing that I've seen over the last couple of years is when I talk to legislators on both sides of the aisle in both houses, Senate and House, is there's a relative lack of concern or understanding on how policies actually affect normal, everyday working people. For instance, tonight, when I leave this podcast this afternoon, I'm going to a roundtable discussion over at the office of a logger obviously part of my business is we deliver fuel to people in the forestry business, farmers, construction workers, all those kind of things. They invited me to come speak at a roundtable discussion amongst people in the forestry industry because fuel is getting hard to get. Fuel is getting tight. Prices, a price for a gallon of off-road fuel is about double what it was 2 years ago, and these guys are talking about shutting down. Do people really understand what's going to happen if loggers shut down, if farmers shut down? I mean, they don't grow produce in the back of Food Lion. Yeah. So these problems are really starting to get down to the nuts and bolts of what makes Virginia and most parts of the country work, and it's a scary time.
And Joe, talk about that. I mean, we've talked about the high inflation, high gas prices, how skill game ban affected small business, all of these issues, and especially with what we're looking at now economically. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing now, what we can expect in the future, and quite frankly, what can Virginia, the legislature, do to help small Virginians prosper and grow, maybe even turn back the tide of what we're seeing?
Well, first of all, with respect to what Hermie said, Hermie, this past weekend on Friday and Saturday, I was up at the Virginia Forest Products Association meeting at the Richmond International Raceway and toured everything that they're doing. And you're right, that forestry industry is a huge integral part of the economy of Virginia. And what was troubling to me is that people right now, the forestry industry is also worried about. I am a huge proponent of alternative energy sources, but we can't cut down timber land and then put in 50 acres of just solar panels. Do you follow me? That's taking away from that forestry industry. And I learned so much spending 4 or 5 hours up there with them. Bill, what you're talking, let me tell you what scares me the most. It's inflation. And I remember in 2020, I remember with such clarity. Talk about options. Option one, people continued to work and took home $500-600 after all their taxes. Or option two, don't work, take home $600 plus $300 or $900 a week. Option A, work, pay your taxes, take home $600, do nothing, stay at home and take home $900. We were printing money in order to finance that, and now it's come home to roost, the problems, and we have rampant inflation. That is but if anybody didn't think we were going to have it, you were living under a rock. You cannot run those printing presses of money in Washington, okay, distribute the paper and not have the type of inflation that we're having. So, Bill, I'm really worried about that, okay? And I grew up, I'm an older dad, but I grew up in a time where you worked. I've been working every day since I was 13. That's what I do, okay? There's a culture out there of people that, government owes them something. They don't want to work. There's people that came into the House of Delegates that didn't know the difference between a B for billion and an M for million. Just spend it. But those of us that have been signing the fronts of checks for 3 or 4 decades know you've got to be prudent. You've got to be practical. Hermie, I know you've got a successful trucking company business and truck stops, but I bet early on in your career, on more than one occasion, and Bill, when you were running your law firm, when you were signing the front of the checks and you got your own check, you had to put it in the drawer for a week or 2 weeks or a month before you could pull it back because the money wasn't there. You had to take care of the employees first. So that's concerning to me. I am not one of those Democrats that say, spend, and worry about it tomorrow. I'm worrying about it right now.
Yeah, and I got to agree with you, and it's that kind of forward thinking that we're going to need as we tread through these times, and I think they're going to be as perilous. We're not losing life in the terms of we did with the pandemic, but I mean, these are going to be perilous times, and we're going to have to be honest with ourselves in ways that we hadn't before and get off what we're used to doing, which is, spend, and everything's coming up roses, and so everything should be fine.
Well, Fighting Joe brings up a good
There you go. You got it right.
Yeah, I got it right.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know him. I wanted to make sure I'm doing it right. But Joe, you bring up a very good point. As generations change and cultures change, and government starts to age out, and a new class of congressmen and senators come in, how do we transition from that frugal point of government to the new part of government that's just spend? How are we going to transition from one class to the next?
It's funny. I once said jokingly that in order to come into Congress or the state legislature, you had to be either a D1, D2 athlete, or you had to be a businessman or businesswoman, as opposed to somebody that's been feeding at the public trough for a long time. You got to come in with some semblance or some modicum of financial accountability and responsibility. Here's what I think is going to happen, Shep. I think the following. Right now, we are in uncharted territory that we had in, after the next year, almost $8 billion surplus. And some people are thinking, spend it now and spend it on programs that you have to continue to spend on, or, give it back. I'm a proponent of giving most of it back to the electorate. Let them decide where to spend it, okay? I believe in one-time programs, or putting it into a program that you had, Bill, $500 million into a fund that could give grants out to people that are renovating schools. But I just think this. I told the kids today at Petersburg High School, some of you might come into the General Assembly, come in having done something. I said, you don't have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an architect. You might be a shop owner. You might be a teacher. You might be a mortician. But come in having accomplished something. Run a business. Teach children. Do something. Come in there with that, and then you can contribute. What do I think is going to happen, Shep? I am scared that we will not get inflation under control. I think that we will, we're going to have to pay the piper in 23, 24, 25, 2026. And I think people are going to finally realize that we want representatives, senators, delegates that are financially responsible. And I look to see people who have had accomplishments in their career. And let me just mention this note. Hermie, I think you might be thinking about running for the Senate. Am I right?
I know nothing about such stuff as that.
Yes, he does.
Cheeky. If you are great, that's wonderful. It's public service is something that's good. But I saw something the other day, and I commented on my radio show yesterday that I didn't like. There's a young man, young to me. He's in his early 50s. His name is Hong Chow. He won the Republican nomination over 11 candidates to face off against Elaine Laurie.
Wexton.
Okay, Elaine Laurie.
No, Jennifer Wexton, I think. It's Wexton in the 10th. In the 10th.
And now this guy came over as a refugee, as a toddler from Vietnam, went to the United States Naval Academy, 25 years in special services, runs a business, and the Democratic Congressional Committee immediately came out and said he's, just ripped into him for being part of the MAGA crowd and how he was far right. And instead of just saying, congratulations on your accomplishments, congratulations on the nomination. Now let's just have a good debate in November. It's attack. I found that doesn't work. You can compliment and criticize the opposing side. I did it. Bill, when I ran for the Senate, I ran against a woman who was a 30-year incumbent in Petersburg. No scandal at all. Joe's got it by the mile, okay? Nope, and I'm proud of it. But with that said, 3 governors and 1 United States senator came down and were attacking me. I, on the other hand, I went after my opponent because she had supported Delegate Tran's bill that allowed an abortion on the day of delivery. Remember that bill? I stuck to my values, to my principles, and went after those 3 governors. They came down to Petersburg, campaigned against me.
Yeah.
Hermie,
yeah.
I took the high road, but I didn't abandon my principles, and I beat her in her own city 72 to 28 among everybody and also in every ward. So my point is, if you do decide to get into that forum, Bill does it on the floor. Bill, you're well liked by people on both sides, and you got to reach out to those other sides to get things done. And hey, listen, if somebody does something, Hermie, on the Democrats that you like, it doesn't hurt you to compliment them. Say, hey, good on you, mate. Good job. And if and then if your own party does something that's wrong, don't hesitate to say, better rethink that. It's my approach. So I'm hoping that we have a little bit more civility to it. I look across the aisle in the Senate, and I see Bill, and I see Siobhan Donovan, and Todd Pillion, and I see Richard Stewart, and so many folks on the other side that there are areas where we can agree. And guess what? You find those areas, and then you get legislation passed that benefits the entire Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm. Joe, let me just say this. I am a living, breathing example of what the government can potentially do to you if you do not stand up and fight. And I look at things maybe not so much all the time as through the lens of Democrats versus Republicans. I look at it through the lens of, I live in Southside Virginia. We have a unique set of challenges. I look at it at Southside Virginia versus Northern Virginia, Southside Virginia versus Hampton Roads. Our state, in some ways, is dependent too much or governed too much by the people in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, and maybe they don't see our needs as much. And so I am proud of what we have been able to do, Senator Stanley and I, as far as standing up when the government is working against you unconstitutionally, as we believe. And I am considering making a run at the newly drawn 17th senatorial district. I'm
That's right next to the 16th.
Right next to the 16th.
You guys can sit together.
But you know what? I think it's important for people on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, to your point, Joe, that when you see something that could potentially, in your opinion, have a negative impact on the people you serve, you have an obligation to bring attention to those things regardless of what other people in your party may think.
Let me give you a prime example with the gentleman sitting to your left, Hermie. Bill is pro-life, but he's pro-life. He's pro-life, not just at the beginning of life, but at the end. One of those senators on the other side that said that was opposed to the death penalty because he's pro-life, okay? And it certainly didn't hurt Bill, Senator Stanley, to reach out and say, this is my position, this is the conviction that I have, and it has served him well, because this is what I found out. People rather vote for somebody, they might not agree with them, but they want a politician to have convictions, things that they believe in, not like some of those folks that tell one side of the county this, and then they travel 3 hours to another part of their district and tell them something different. So, so you can do that.
And Joe, you and I share that. Actually, you're a pro-life Democrat. That's because of your faith. It's because of my faith. I'm pro-life when it comes to abortion, the issues of abortion. He gets an awful lot of pressure from Democrats, liberals about that issue. And then on the other side, he's against the death penalty, and I'm against the death penalty for moral and faith issues grounds, and also believing that government shouldn't have the awesome power to take a life, and government gets it wrong. And Joe and I have seen where the government has wrongly convicted someone only to be acquitted years later, but we can't give them back 4 years of their life. So what we do is we give them $3 million and walk away. But we get attacked for that from our own side. But actually, it's the most consistent consistent position you can have when it comes to life and be true to your convictions. And so I'm proud to stand with him on that, on both sides of the aisle. And quite frankly, if someone's going to attack me for it, I don't care, because it's my conviction, it's my principle, it's my faith. And if you don't like it, vote me out of office. That's your right to do. And
Hey, gentlemen, I've got to get.
You know, in my research,
Yeah, he's got to go.
The Fighting Joe Morrissey show starts in a minute and a half. We're on 4 radio stations simultaneously every day from 12 to 1.
Tell us where you're on. Give us a plug.
It's in Central Virginia on 3 FM stations and 1 AM station, and it's we criticize and praise people on both sides of the spectrum and both parties, and we have fun. Hermie, I think you've been on the show. Bill, you were on last week. So
Yep.
Bill, I'm going to see you when you come to Richmond. We got business to talk over.
Yes, sir.
Hermie, keep fighting. What's that? Lean right, turn
Joe,
left.
thank you. Yep.
yeah, he turns left. I'm leaning right, baby.
He's leaning right. I'm turning. If I turn right, I'm in
And one
trouble.
final thing,
Joe, I can't thank you
my
enough.
son, my 7-year-old son Chase, and you, Hermie, have something in common. Avid University of North Carolina Tar Heel fans.
There you go.
Literally, we were out in out west skiing this year when the championship game on. He was crying. He was dancing on the beds when North Carolina was up by 15 at half, and he was crying.
Me too.
He was crying at the end of the game when the Jayhawks won.
Me too.
So
we got to get him to a game next year.
Yeah, and let's bring your family on out to a race, too. We enjoyed having you in Richmond. Let's have you and your family back out again. It was such a great, fun time. Joe, God bless you. Thank you for being my friend, and thank you for coming on Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler in the Center.
my pleasure.
You're my
Thanks.
brother.
See you, gentlemen.
Psst. Who's going to take care of your family if something happens to you? What would they do without your income? If you don't have a plan, you need to go to GoliathLife.com. Get a quick quote for more than 20 carriers. You don't even have to leave the house. If you need a medical exam, they'll send somebody to your house or office. You're in total control. You pick the rates, you pick the payments, you pick the terms. You're in total control, but it gives you and your family peace of mind. What if something happens to your income? Hurry to GoliathLife.com.
Hey, this is Bill Stanley, Hermie Sadler's sidekick on this podcast. But when I'm not in Richmond at the Capitol or doing this podcast, my real job for the past 27 years is as a trial attorney with the Stanley Law Group. Here at the Stanley Law Group, we represent our clients in every courthouse in the Commonwealth. No problem is too small for us to solve. No case is too big for us to win. Whether it's criminal charges, traffic offenses, civil disputes, litigation matters of any sort, we handle it all. We make sure we treat every client like family because they are to us. Your problem is our problem. Your success is our success because we hate to lose more than we love to win. And believe me, we win a lot. Don't believe me? Go ask Hermie. I'm his favorite lawyer. Give us a call at 540-721-6028 and let us help you. Or visit our website at www.vastanleylawgroup.com. At the Stanley Law Group, we'll make sure that we are the lawyers that you swear by and not at.
And we're back, Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace-O-Matic and Joe Morrissey.
What an interview.
What a guy.
What a guy who has done literally everything.
I'm telling you, except race. And now,
Everything.
Hermie's
Hey, he wants to
committed.
race.
Now Hermie's committed about $80,000
Every
worth of
time
car
I
to
get
a
one of my
race.
friends on, Bill immediately hires them to run a race, regardless of how much money it's going to cost us. So I figured I need to return the favor. So watch out for Fighting Joe Morrissey coming to a smart modified tour race near you.
I want to see the
Hide
hood
your
of that
children
car.
and put helmets on, everybody.
What is the hood on that car going to look like after Fighting Joe gets out?
Did you notice he made sure that I would be responsible for the fixing?
He did say
if there was
that.
some wrecking. Maybe we'll start him out on one of those midgets or what do they call
So
those
you can
things?
go ahead and
Hornets.
draw the contract up.
I'm on it.
It's got to be in writing so there's no misunderstanding.
Listen, I'm telling you, he'll take one lap at about half speed and then he'll try to jam it. I know Joe. He's not going to do this half-half.
Well, I got to say it again. What a Wikipedia page that guy has.
Yeah.
It is unreal. It's long, too. I mean, it just keeps, you get to the bottom, next, next. He just keeps going.
I've been his friend and his lawyer, and it's never a boring moment. He looked at me one time and said, "What do you want out of this?" I said, "A piece of Velcro just to tape myself next to you so I can watch what happens next." He is the same way and very passionate on the floor of the Senate. And as a legislator, he's passionate about the people he represents. And quite frankly, I think he's the epitome, as though he is a Democrat. He says he has a libertarian heart, but he's the epitome of what Winsome Sears said on one of our previous podcasts, where, you need to find that part where you can be you can disagree without being disagreeable. And then he really focuses on the things that we can work on together. And if we can't work on something together, and I don't mean just me, but he works on things with Republicans across the aisle or anyone, if we can find common ground on issues that are nonpartisan, or even if they're partisan, is there a middle ground without sacrificing everybody's principles? There's a lot of people. He's an electric, sometimes polarizing figure in politics. I don't think he minds much of that. I think that's what he trades on, and also how he gets things done. But in the end, there may be people in the legislature that don't like Joe Morrissey, but they got to respect him. And he wields a lot of authority because he can be that crossover vote. It's 21-19 in the Senate. Democrats control right now. If he comes over to our side on an issue, which could be a nonpartisan issue, but the Democrats have locked up on, that throws it to the lieutenant governor, and we might get something passed. So that gives him a lot of authority and a lot of influence in the direction of politics in the state Senate. And I don't think he abuses that. I think he handles it as well as he can under the circumstances.
All right, so listen. Both of y'all forced me to spill my guts on the situation with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
We had to hug it out afterwards.
It was kind of brutal.
Like,
That was brutal,
yeah,
but also was long-winded because I need to get it out there. Then we kind of pepped things back up with Joe Morrissey. My point being, we got to get to the leaning right and turning left moments of the show, but we need to get to it.
Okay. He's got to go.
In other words,
Go. So, hey, I'll start off with my leaning right moment, brought to you as always. I have a sponsor, and now you do too, Hermie. Brought to you by Charlie's Waterfront Cafe in beautiful downtown Farmville, Virginia, right next to the Greenfront Furniture Warehouse. Guys, if you're going to go to Farmville, Virginia, if you have the opportunity, maybe go to the Moton Museum, visit your kids at one of the colleges or universities there, go furniture shopping or see the sights in beautiful downtown Farmville. Make sure you go get a bite to eat at the beautiful Charlie's Waterfront Cafe overlooking Appomattox River. It's got an outdoor dining, indoor dining. It's got a beautiful bar. They have live entertainment. You won't want to miss it. And the best thing is the food and drink is top notch. Tell Tom Graziano his roommate Bill Stanley sent you, and see if he'll give you something off of your bill. Just give it a shot. Just, for me, just go up there and go, hey, I listened to the podcast, and your old roommate Bill Stanley was talking about you and how great your restaurant is, and see if he can't cut something off your bill. Maybe get a free dessert.
I do not have a sponsor for my leaning left moment.
Yes, you do.
So while Brian Boyd is in the dealership, I'm going to say that I'm comping this one, that my turning left moment on this week's podcast is proudly sponsored with no check changing hands by Boyd of South Hill. So when you need a new car, come to Boyd of South Hill.
Yeah, no wonder the rock deal was what the rock deal was, man. You're just
That's
giving
right,
it away
gave it
over
away.
there. All right, so then I'm going to move Lee Talley and Harry Talley's sponsorship of the coalition to draft Hermie Sadler for State Senate in the 17th District to the next show.
Next show, that'd be fine.
Okay, so we'll do
This
Boyd
show,
as your
since
sponsor.
we're in the beautiful dealership of Boyd, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram here in
and
South
Ram
Hill.
and Honda.
I got my own
Next
car
door
over
to
there.
us.
So
We have a complex.
I know a guy who can help you out with that.
Shep, I need rock bottom prices. Oh, I'm sorry, I
the
didn't mean to
rock
say
bottom.
rock.
Here we go. We need rock bottom. Just when I thought I was over it.
Shouldn't have said the rock. So what we've got
Look,
going
the
on?
deals are so good at Boyd. I'll go back to a phrase my old buddy Walter Rainey, who we also call
I do know Walter.
the Rock.
The Rock.
We used to call him the Rock. One of my salesmen I had when I was up here in South Hill, Walter would give a price to somebody, and he would say, "That price is so good, if you don't buy it, I'm going to buy it myself."
All right. Now that's the ultimate salesman. So how many cars does he have in his front yard? Like 10? I mean, wow.
All right, so
Now, this is a
what-
beautiful dealership, by the way, and thank you for letting us be here. It saves me about an hour drive back to Franklin County, and I don't have to drive all the way to Emporia. And
Poor ya.
Porter.
and so, we're just so proud and happy to be here at Boyd. And if you've got any car needs and want to come down here and see what they got, and they got a lot of good stuff, I've got my eye on a couple here. Come down here and give it your best
Come
shot.
see me.
come see Shep Moss.
Come see Shep Moss.
He might make you a deal, and then again, he
And
might
look,
not.
if you don't like what he says, he'll punch you, apparently, because he's got a wrap on his right hand
I
like
saw
he's
that.
Well, I was actually practicing cooking pizzas, and I told Hermie if I don't start selling cars, I'm going to be cooking pizzas at Faux Show.
He may
So I was
have an
practicing.
opening, by
He
the
might.
way.
Yeah, I understand.
just found out we got to open him today, as a matter of fact.
Now, on my leaning right moment, of course, what we saw last week, it was released on May 19th. The governor had entered what we call an Executive Order 1, which was a full investigation, top to bottom, on the education system in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and specifically the K through 12 public education system. And so the Virginia Department of Education undertook to see where we were in Virginia out of the pandemic, and after basically what we've had is about 10 years of school policies that have really changed the dynamic of public school in Virginia. Specifically, we've lessened the requirements for graduation. We've lessened SOL requirements. You even see now we're lessening admission requirements to some of our top public schools, which are, like Thomas Jefferson up in Northern Virginia. We're trying to say that everybody gets a trophy instead of demanding that all of our students excel, so that when they come out of high school, and most of them in Virginia do not go on to college, that they're workforce ready, that they've got the education they need to be successful in their lives and to be good, productive, tax-paying citizens. And what we found from this education report was quite disturbing. And I just want to go over it. It was a 33-page report. It detailed how state policy choices and priorities over the last decade have resulted in lower student achievement in reading and math, wider achievement gaps, and especially in between African-American students, white students, Asian-American students, the different economic classes that we have in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and what we're seeing most recently now, which is eroding parent confidence in the Commonwealth's public schools and their ability to teach our kids without indoctrinating them. The wide gaps, I think, just the math part of this, the percentages that I'm seeing in the report are so disturbing and demonstrate we've been on the wrong path, and we need to correct that path, and we need our parents' involvement in correcting those paths. Think of it this way. This is what came out of the report. Only 33%, Hermie, of Virginia's 8th graders are proficient in reading on the 2019 National Report Card. And so they call it the NAEP report. Only 33% of our students in the 8th grade, we're talking about 13, 14-year-old kids, can read at the minimum required level of proficiency in reading. Only 38% of Virginia 4th graders are proficient in reading. From 2017 to now, our reading SOL scores, the standard of learning that we give all of our students, have declined every single year. We're talking about reading and writing and math. 42% of Virginia's 2nd graders scored below reading benchmarks in the fall of 2021. Virginia has fallen from 3rd to 9th in the nation on students that earn college credits on AP exams. I mean, this report is replete of where we've failed our children. You've heard me say this on this podcast before. Our children are our greatest natural resource here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we're not doing a good job. And it's about time that we have this revolution in the public school system, because we have to. This is our generational future, and we have to have good students that become good people in the Commonwealth. That's going to bring good jobs here, keep the jobs we've got here, and also make sure as we get older that the Commonwealth is in good hands. And what they've also found here that was quite disturbing was that Virginia education has experienced also a lack of transparency. That is, these negative data trends have been going on for years, since 2016, 2017. But guess what? The administrations that we've had previously, which are Democrat administrations, have failed to release this negative data to give us this kind of insight that we were moving in the wrong direction, that we had to change. So now we're in a deeper hole than we should have been at the time. That's an unbelievable thing that has been made only worse by the pandemic. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic school closures in Virginia, we offered less in-school participation to students than some other states did, and we're seeing that our kids have suffered. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist, and especially if you have school-age children like I do, to see what a difference the school closures made in the learning of our children. Just imagine those children that are living in poverty, at or below the poverty level, trying to break the cycle of poverty, using education to do it, and they're not being taught what they need to know to break that cycle of poverty, and they're getting behind their peers in other states, and quite frankly, they're not going to be workforce ready. We are doing a disservice to our students and to our parents if we don't fix this and fix it now. And so I applaud Governor Youngkin for this report, and I think it's a wake-up call for us all. I think even Joe Morrissey talked about the need to modernize our school buildings and education. But what's most important to me and shocking to me is that when this report came out, just like when Youngkin became governor, instead of Democrats saying, you know what, yep, we gotta really put our shoulder to the wheel, we gotta buckle our chin strap and really do something great. No, they said dog whistle, false report, fake news, blah, 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 partisan this, partisan that, ignoring what are core facts, these percentages that I just read you, and again, making school a partisan issue rather than making it the most important issue to make sure our children are getting the best education possible in Virginia. I'm appalled. I'm ready to work. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and do it. I just hope my Democrat friends are as well. And that is your leaning right moment. What do you think about that, Herm?
It's sad. It's really, really sad. And you would think, in our conversation with Joe Morrissey, one of the things we talked about was finding issues that we should all easily be able to agree upon and combine resources on and work together, because division and trying to find ways to discredit facts like that does nothing but hurt the kids.
Yeah.
And in our county, we're very focused on workforce development because we're trying to recruit industry here. We're on 58, 85, Lake Gaston, Bugs Island Lake. And the thing that we're running into is industries are looking at our locality to locate, but we don't have the workforce here to support them. So, it's just a big trickle-down effect. When your workforce is not in place, you're not going to draw industry. You're not going to draw high-paying jobs that can pay tax revenue to further better the community. It's just a real sad, and I do know that our Mecklenburg County Public Schools has hired a workforce development person that is really concentrating on that and working with our Chamber of Commerce and trying to have some, programs where you can go in and work in industry, some apprenticeship type situations for high school students to get them ready to come out of high school.
It just sounds like to me there's a constant dialogue back and forth of, do we raise the standards and try to give the schools and our teachers resources to get our kids up to that level, or are we satisfied with lowering the standards to
let everybody pay,
to let everybody get a trophy that will not serve them well, whether they decide to go to college or whether they decide to go to a trade school or whether they come right out of high school and enter the workforce, which as a small business owner, that's a big part of what we're trying to do now is find qualified, motivated people that have the basic skills necessary to come do basic everyday work and jobs at our variety of businesses and others. And there's a real lack of that right now, and it's very scary, not only for the kid and for the families that are not prepared leaving school, but also for the people that are business owners that are looking at what our schools are providing and producing, and they're not ready to enter the workforce.
And this report basically stated, when looking at the past, Virginia Department of Education through the past two administrations prior to the Republican Youngkin administration, and I've seen it happen because some of the legislation even made this, where we lessened the number of SOLs or changed around the formats. But we have created lowered expectations for students, and we've redefined what success is for a student. And this is a workforce talent pipeline that we have to create. But we may make ourselves feel better by lowering those expectations and redefining successes. But it's the student who graduates who's not even proficient in reading, writing, or arithmetic, who instead has been indoctrinated with some other bunk that's really not going to help them get a job or keep a job. That's what's hurting our kids, man. And we're paying the price for these political decisions, and we're using our kids as the pawn. And that's appalling to me. And quite frankly, we need to stop the nitpicking back and forth between Republican and Democrat in Richmond. Say, we've got a problem. How are we going to solve this? Because we should not be a state that says, well, we're fine with having dumb kids that we don't teach. Or we'll say, if the public school system's not going to give you what you should have, then you should be free to homeschool your child or have school choice, or to be able to send them to a private school, in the same way that if you're in a lower class economically, you'd have the same opportunities as somebody that could afford that tuition. We've got to give those parents those choices. We've got to open it up, and that will make education more competitive and probably make our public schools better at what they're doing, and make teachers want to come there and teach, because we're even having a brain drain when it comes to teachers. And we took VOTEC out of the school, vocational technical schools, so we have a brain drain in terms of the trades. We've got to get off this kick that we've been on and get back to teaching kids what they need to be taught and giving them the skills they need to have to live a great life in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
And by the way, the future of the Commonwealth judicially is part of that workforce. You know, I mentioned to Fighting Joe, who is coming up to replace our lawmakers.
Right.
You know, if the kids aren't coming out to even get a job, how are they going to run the state?
And that's very good point there, Shep. And we're talking about the basics, though. We're talking about math and reading. I mean, they couldn't even read a bill.
The 3 R's?
Yeah, that's right. They couldn't even read a bill at this point in time, or comprehend. Comprehension is a part of reading, and if you're not proficient, 30, 38, 40%, I mean, that's unacceptable.
Ready to turn left?
Let's turn left.
Yeah, but I'm going to mention one more thing before I get off my soapbox. We've talked about Envigo Beagles. You and I both have adopted a pair each of Envigo Beagles. We've helped get those over 500 dogs adopted out of there. The federal government filed a lawsuit, got an injunction just a couple days ago against Envigo, where they found 147 dogs that were either in acute distress or malnourished, and they seized them. And they put on Envigo basically that they cannot euthanize another dog without a court order. They have to clean up their act immediately within 10 to 14 days, and they cannot even sell a beagle until they've cleaned up their act to the satisfaction of the federal government. Things are changing very quickly for Envigo. As you know, I sponsored 5 bills. We called them the Beagle Bills. We've talked about them on the podcast. But right now, the federal government has stepped in. The federal courts have given an injunction. And right now, hopefully, they're changing their ways. And more hopefully, those beagles are safe and have a chance at life. Because we've put regulatory processes in place here in Virginia that will give those opportunities to those beagles to find forever homes, even if they are experimented on, or if they're not, but they don't sell them. So I'm hoping for great things, but it's heartbreaking to have that happening right now.
And kudos to you, and I think Senator Marsden for bringing attention to that. And
Jenna Boysko, too. Senator Boysko was a great patron and co-patron of my bill.
Appreciate y'all working together to shedding light on that ultimately is one that needs to be addressed in a short order. So congratulations to all involved to try to get something done that should not be happening.
And I just wanted to bring a sad puppy dog story to this podcast because we had one earlier in the first segment involving The Rock.
We did.
So that is my Leaning Right moment, brought to you by Charlie's Waterfront Cafe. Now your Turning Left moment with a new sponsor setting off the sponsorship. Another 2 weeks that we already have in place. Go ahead, Big Cat.
Yeah, this is today non-monetarily sponsored by Boyd of South Hill. I just wanted to have a quick, I know we need to get going here. We've had a long podcast, but this has been all things considered, been a good one. And
very good one.
You know, Joe was great, and Joe, you never know what you're going to get quite with him. And, but he's, you know, in a certain way, we need people like him.
You do.
In legislature. We don't need people just to follow the track right down the middle all the time. We need somebody who's got opinions, not afraid to share them, not afraid to say when something needs to be said, and not afraid to fight. So
wears his whole life on his sleeve, and if he doesn't wear it on his sleeve, it's in the front page of the Richmond Times.
I'm just curious on my turning left moment. You know, this past weekend we had the All-Star Race.
Yeah.
In NASCAR, and I'll say right up front that, well, first of all, congratulations to Ryan Blaney for winning $1 million.
Twice.
Great.
Does he get $2 million?
But I'll let you get off on that tangent in a moment. But I will say right off the bat that there needs to be some serious consideration on how to revamp, revitalize, whatever you want to call it, the All-Star Race. But the one thing that I will say is I think the All-Star Race should return to and always remain at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. It has nothing to do with Texas being a bad track or anything like that. The All-Star Race, to me, in all the years that I was involved in it from a TV perspective and a part of the support races of that weekend, whether it be truck racing, all that, is it was an extra week that all the teams and their families and friends could be at home and bring their families, friends, wives, kids, everything to the racetrack to enjoy all the activities of All-Star Week. And when you take that away and make all the teams travel to Texas for an All-Star exhibition, and in the price of fuel now, you give Blaney $1 million. Well, he spent $500,000 putting fuel in the transport truck getting back home. But really, you know, there's people that have opinions of how exciting the race was or lack thereof and all that. I know the people at Texas Motor Speedway did everything that they could to make it an event. But I always view the All-Star race as an opportunity for the teams and not just the drivers, but the crew members, all the people that travel, an extra week at home, and more importantly than that, an opportunity to bring their families to the racetrack to enjoy racing in a non-points, less contentious environment, for a week. And I always enjoyed that, look forward to that, being in Charlotte for 2 weeks with everybody's family and friends. And so I hope that not just NASCAR, because, SMI, Speedway Motorsports, they own the rights to the All-Star race. That's why it's always going to be at an SMI-owned track. But I think let's not lose sight of the fact that Charlotte Motor Speedway and the greater Charlotte area is home to probably 90% of everybody involved in NASCAR, and I hope they'll consider taking it back to Charlotte, if for no other reason, that everybody can enjoy an extra week at home, no travel, and have their kids and family at the racetrack to see what dad does or what mom does or what uncle does or what niece does or whatever. Have them all at the track to enjoy it.
Well, let me ask you this, though. So you didn't enjoy the race?
I did not. I've gotten over complaining about everything. But if you want me to if you're asking me that I sit home, was I on the edge of my seat watching that race? No, I was not.
Okay. Well, I mean, I liked some parts of it. I liked the qualifying, especially when it got down to.
But they could do that at Charlotte.
Right.
Okay. Or maybe why not go to one of the classic short tracks like they did at Bristol?
Good.
I mean, maybe like a South Boston. Or, just make it different.
There's probably pros and cons to everything. But what I'm saying is, I would like SMI or the people involved to pay more attention to the fact that the entire industry, if you have it at Charlotte, is able to
enjoy it,
make it more interactive to the people, industry insiders that are able to that spend a lot of time gone.
I actually didn't hate the format, even though it was kind of complicated. I like that kind of, to get the pole, you had to go through the 4-car tire change and then do a lap and do it in the way that Kyle Busch got the pole. I like that. I also want to make sure that if Kyle Larson ever says anything, because he said when he was out of the race, looks like it's Kyle Busch's to lose, and as soon as he said that, then Kyle gets a flat tire and somebody runs over top of him. So I don't ever want Kyle Larson mentioning my name or something, that I'm going to do something and then the negative happens. But I thought that was pretty exciting. And then it was an interesting finish. If you don't mind, because, you're the NASCAR guy with all the knowledge. My son Chandler and I are watching it in the bed. We're rooting for everything that's going on. Blaney looks like he has it. They throw the yellow real quick right before he hits the tape, and they make him run again when he's pulled down his windscreen. Window net.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. See, that shows how much of an idiot I am sometimes. So he pulls down the window net thinking he won, and he hadn't won. And then you see him running around at about 4 or 5 laps trying to put that window net up. Denny Hamlin said they should have black flagged him, brought him into the pits, because that's the rules. They're changing rules to make sure everybody wins. But quite frankly, they took a victory away that even the rules guy at NASCAR said later, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have thrown that yellow. I don't know what happened. That
was the real mistake, was NASCAR throwing a yellow flag 30 feet before the race winner gets to the start-finish line for a car that's up against the wall on the backstretch.
Yeah.
That should never have been done. I think NASCAR admitted as such.
They owned it.
But there's no way that Ryan Blaney 100% adequately, you can't do that with basically one hand.
Why is that? You can't fasten it.
Because the way it takes somebody from the outside to do it. I mean, you can't with one hand put it in that way, and have it latch sufficiently, hook it this way, and then it has to be tape put around the latch.
And snapped.
He had it up enough to finish, but it was not installed or put in to the letter of the law as far as what NASCAR requires you to do. And if it worked out where it didn't become an issue, but let's say Denny Hamlin gets into him and he spins around sideways or turns over, that window net falls out. All of a sudden, Ryan Blaney's hand is hanging at the side of the car and loses an arm. Then it's a problem. Now, it turned out to be not a problem because nothing happened. But NASCAR would put themselves, nobody but themselves, in a bad situation because a bad call by the race director put them in a situation where they almost had to ignore a safety concern that, luckily for them, did not rear its ugly head.
So was Denny right? Was Denny Hamlin right that you should have black flagged and pulled him in?
Yes.
Because that's the rule.
And they did not, because they're the ones that made a bad call in race control to open up that can of worms that should never have been opened.
Some have suggested that perhaps NASCAR should have allowed him to come down into the pits, fix his netting, get back up, and not lose position because of the bonehead move of throwing the yellow right there before the finish.
You can make an argument for that. That's not
in the rules.
That's not the rules either.
Right.
But that, safety speaking, they would have been safer to do that, but that would have caused even more people to be mad.
So either way, no
The
matter
only
how
person
finished,
that's
people are pissed.
not mad is Ryan Blaney
because he's got $1 million.
because he got $1 million. He
Minus-
probably should.
Well, he's got 500 left.
Yeah, minus his gas.
He probably should have been more vocal about the call to throw a caution when he's looking at the checkered flag. Mm-hmm. But he chose to kind of laugh off the Denny Hamlins and the other people that but ultimately in a race like that, one person's happy and everybody else is upset.
So once the yellow lights come on and you saw the flagman, he had the checker and he's getting ready to wave it, and suddenly he jumps over and grabs the yellow and puts that out as he.
Well, you also have to remember too that the rules for the All-Star Race are different than normal race weekends, because under normal race weekends, once you take the white flag, the next flag ends the race.
Oh.
So
and
in
this
a
has to
normal
end on a green.
points-paying race, once Blaney has the white flag, the next flag, whether it be the yellow or that next flag, the race would have officially ended at that point anyway.
So NASCAR couldn't have changed their mind.
No.
They could have said, "Hey, that was an error."
For the
That's
All-Star
really
race, the rule was you have to finish under green. So race director may have for a moment forgotten that, just guessing, and threw the caution thinking that he was ending the race when in fact he was throwing the caution even when Blaney was hands down the winner and could see the checkered flag, right in front of him. They put themselves and the competitors in a situation unnecessarily, in my opinion, where they had to re-rack them and do another restart.
The one thing you can say about this, though, is once again, another week, and we're talking about the finisher. We're talking about something happening, which has not been happening in NASCAR for quite some time. These next-gen cars, these wheels rolling out of the pits, these wheels falling off the cars while they're driving, and now a funky end to the All-Star race, and here we are talking about it again. And we've got the Charlotte Coca-Cola 600 coming up next week. I always love that race because you get just a full dose of racing between that and the Indy 500. What are you thinking about that?
Well, I enjoy that day of racing. I'll be watching. I typically do not care much about watching IndyCar racing, but Jimmy Johnson, good friend, will be out there running his first Indianapolis 500. So I will be watching that as well as the Coca-Cola 600. So it goes back to my love of the history of the sport, which is another reason why I say the majority of the history of the All-Star race was done at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So take it back there.
Are you going to be watching that at home? Are you going to be at the lake? Where are you going to be?
I don't know.
Who knows?
After y'all making me tell these stories, I'll probably be sitting on the back porch by myself crying.
With his therapist right next to him in a lawn chair.
My therapist.
With the big
So,
all right. Well, that's you've brought up some good points, and my son Chandler you make sure you ask Hermie about that finish. And
well, if you watch it at the lake, call me. I'll bring you over a bottle of just cry in my cup, and we'll get it over with.
Look forward to that, Shep.
You want to hug it out after the show ends today?
No.
You sure?
I'm angry.
What if I just come up and hug you anyway?
I'm angry.
Are you
I
gonna
think
push me
he's
on?
going west when he gets up from this table. He's
I'm angry.
going. Are you going west or east?
I mentioned this earlier, I'm going over to Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina, to visit with a group of loggers, people in the forestry industry, and some farmers, and some people in the construction to discuss the crisis that we're in as it relates to fuel cost and availability for these critical members of our business communities.
And will you be on Maverick 102.3 so I can set my alarm?
Tomorrow morning.
Excellent. Will you tell Huggy Bear?
Huggy Bear and
said
Karen?
Hello, Karen and Huggy Bear.
Huggy Bear.
I love them. They're great. And especially Artie the meat guy who gives us... He sounds like Shep. I'm thinking maybe Shep's got a side job as the meat guy.
I got a lot of side jobs.
But meat's not one of them?
Not one of them.
All right.
All right, we've already been off the tracks enough on this one, but I want to take one other opportunity to thank Pace-O-Matic for their support and giving us this platform to have these discussions that we hope people are taking to heart and learning from them as well. And Shep, appreciate you joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Just so you know, your invitation is week to week. Is certainly nothing permanent.
Oh, it's
Shep, you need a lawyer, man.
I
We
might
talk
need a
after this.
contractual lawyer for that.
We love having you, though,
It'll
man.
be,
I mean,
it'll be
really,
week to week.
Week to week, Chad.
Week to week. When you think about it, we're all not only week to week. We're all day to day.
Yes.
We're all day to day.
Yes, indeed.
So-
We're
Well,
not
I guess
guaranteed
week
it
to
tomorrow.
week is better than you're fired. So
Yeah.
Yeah. But thanks for letting us come here to the dealership
absolutely.
you work in, the great dealership. Give them another plug if you wouldn't mind, Shep.
Boyd, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, and Honda of South Hill.
Man, it's a place to buy one.
Place to buy one.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another interesting podcast, our 20th podcast. We're going to go out and celebrate at the Applebee's and have an Oreo shake or something like that. I'm Virginia State Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm always leaning right.
And I'm Hermie Sadler, and I'm turning left. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.
God bless you.